Welcome back to the Explainer. You know, deep inside your car's engine, there's this incredible hidden system. It's like a silent guardian, and its job is twofold: protect the engine from literally destroying itself, and at the same time, squeeze out every single drop of power possible. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on it.
So let's start with something you hear straight from the engineers themselves. They say there's this one particular sound an engine can make, and they call it the primary barrier to achieving higher performance. Think about that. It's not just some random noise, it's the actual wall they have to overcome to unlock more power.
And believe it or not, it gets way worse than just being a barrier. That sound, it's your engine literally hammering itself to death. Yeah, you heard that right. It's a sign of this violent battle happening inside the cylinders, where these immense forces are trying to tear the whole thing apart from the inside. And I'm not exaggerating here. The stakes are incredibly high. Just listen to this quote from a technical paper on the subject. We're talking about a whole list of mechanical failures, from the piston crown getting eroded away, all the way to catastrophic failure of piston rings and head gaskets. So this isn't about, just losing a little bit of performance. This is about preventing a complete and total mechanical meltdown. So what exactly is this terrifying sound? Well, it's called engine knock, or sometimes detonation. And here's the best way to think about it. It's basically a rogue explosion. See, under normal circumstances, the air and fuel mixture in your cylinder has a nice controlled burn that pushes the piston down smoothly. But with knock, a second, totally uncontrolled explosion goes off before that main flame front gets there, and that creates a massive, destructive shockwave. Let's put that side by side. Normal combustion? That's like a firm, smooth push on the piston. But engine knock? No way! That's like taking a sledgehammer and just whacking the top of the piston as hard as you can. Both of these events create pressure waves inside the cylinder, but one is a controlled push, and the other is this violent, supersonic blow. And that is what creates that classic horrible pinging or rattling sound you might hear if something's wrong. Alright, so that brings us to our first section. Let's really get into the nitty-gritty of why this unseen enemy is just so destructive.
Okay, so what is actually happening during a knocking event? Well, you've got this little bit of unburned air and fuel at the far edges of the cylinder. Engineers call it the end gas. Instead of waiting for the flame, it just spontaneously explodes. This creates these insane supersonic pressure waves. Now here's the really bad part. These waves are so violent they literally strip away a tiny insulating layer of gas that normally protects all the metal parts. It's like a shield going down. And the second that shield is gone, you get this massive spike in heat transfer. We're talking raw, intense heat blasted directly onto the piston and the cylinder head. Ouch.
So, if all this chaos is happening deep inside a super noisy, vibrating engine, how on earth does your car even know it's happening? How does it listen for this danger? Well, meet this sentry on the block. The first line of defense is the knock sensor, and you can basically think of it as a super specialized microphone, an accelerometer, technically, that's bolted directly onto the engine. Its one and only job is to listen for one very specific sound, the unique high-frequency ringing or vibration that only a knock event can cause. Now, what's cool is that these sensors come in a couple of different flavors. You have the older style called resonant sensors. They're basically tuned to listen to one and only one frequency. It's like a radio that's permanently locked to a single station. But almost every modern car uses what's called a broadband sensor. This type listens to a huge range of frequencies, and it's up to the car's computer, the ECU, to do the hard work of filtering and finding that specific knock signal. This makes them way more versatile and adaptable.
Okay, so we've got the sensor listening, but that signal it picks up is just raw data. How does the car's computer figure out what's real and what's not? This is where things get really clever. This is the detective work.
And this is the real challenge, right? An engine is an unbelievably noisy place. You've got valves clattering, injectors clicking, pistons flying up and down. It's just a chaotic mess of vibrations. Trying to find that one tiny signal of knock in all that noise, it's like trying to hear a single violin in the middle of a heavy metal concert. So how in the world does the ECU pull it off?
It's all thanks to this brilliant four-step process that happens thousands of times a minute. First, it opens a listening window. It only pays attention during the very specific slice of time, a few degrees of crankshaft rotation, when knock can actually happen. Everything else is ignored. Second, it applies a digital filter, basically telling the microphone to only listen for one specific frequency, say 6.7 kHz, which it knows is the knock frequency for this engine. Third, it measures the energy of whatever it hears on that frequency. And finally, the crucial step, it compares that energy to the normal, average background noise of the engine. If there's a big spike above that background noise, bingo, that's a knock event.
All right, so the ECU has found it. The alarm bells are ringing. A knock event has been confirmed. Now what? How does our Guardian respond?
The ECU's primary weapon is ignition timing. The moment it detects knock, it immediately retards the timing. All that means is it delays when the spark plug fires by just a few crucial degrees. By firing the spark just a tiny bit later, it lowers the pressure and temperature inside the cylinder, which, makes that dangerous spontaneous explosion way less likely to happen.
And when I say a tiny bit, I mean it. We're talking about maybe 4 degrees. Now, negative 4 degrees of ignition timing might not sound like a lot, but that is a massive, immediate change. It happens in a fraction of a millisecond, and that tiny, tiny tweak is often the only thing standing between a perfectly healthy engine and, well, a catastrophic failure.
But here's where the strategy gets really smart. The ECU uses what's called a fast attack slow decay logic. So it attacks the problem by instantly yanking a bunch of timing out to stop the knock cold. But then it doesn't just throw it all back in. No, it has a slow decay. It very, very cautiously adds the timing back in bit by bit to make sure the knock is really gone. This keeps the engine stable, so it's not just bouncing in and out of knock. And hey, if you've ever pushed your car hard on a hot day and it felt a little sluggish for a minute afterwards, that's what's happening. That's the Guardian just carefully letting the engine get back to its peak.
And this is where it gets really, really cool. The system doesn't just react. It doesn't have a short-term memory. No, this Guardian gets smarter over time. It learns.
I mean it. Modern ECUs have these amazing long-term adaptive strategies. Your car's computer literally remembers things. It learns about the quality of the gas you put in the tank. It accounts for the air temperature, and it even makes adjustments as the engine itself ages. It's constantly updating its own rulebook to keep the engine running right on that razor's edge of maximum performance without ever stepping into the danger zone. And the big car makers all have their own unique, clever ways of pulling this off. Ford, for example, has something called the octane adjust ratio, or OAR. The ECU will actually proactively add a little bit of timing just to test the waters, see if the fuel can handle it, and then it learns and adjusts the OAR value based on the result. GM does it a bit differently. Their ECUs often have 2 whole separate timing maps, one for high-octane fuel and one for low-octane. Then, based on the knock history, it creates a knock learn factor and blends between those 2 tables. 2 different paths, but the destination is exactly the same, getting the most power safely out of whatever fuel you happen to have in the tank.
So this whole system is already incredibly smart, right? It listens, it reacts, it learns, which leads to the big question, where do we go from here? What could possibly be next?
Well, the answer is artificial intelligence. Researchers are already deep into this stuff. They're using things like convolutional neural networks, the same kind of AI used for image recognition, to listen to the engine. Instead of just searching for one frequency, a CNN can analyze the entire sound profile. It can learn the unique individual acoustic fingerprint of every single cylinder. It can spot complex patterns in the noise that are totally invisible to today's systems. Some can even figure out the exact octane number of the fuel in your tank in real time. It's incredible stuff.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. We've watched this system evolve from just a simple sensor into this complex Guardian that learns and adapts. But as we push our engines to become even more complex, more powerful, and more efficient, will that Guardian need to become a true AI? A system that can actually think and make its own intelligent decisions to keep the heart of our cars safe? Looking at the research, the answer seems to be absolutely.